Hey guys, welcome back to new video, and in this video I'm gonna show you how you can use filter operators in your RxJava stream. So without wasting any time, let's get started with our video. So first we have main function, and in this main we have an observable. Make sure this observable is coming from RxJava 3.core, and in this we have j, then we have jetpack, and we have Android item, and then we have Android, Kotlin, and my name, which is Himanshu. And I'm gonna add one duplicate value, jetpack. So now we have observable. It's time to see how we can use filter operator. So observable, we have first filter operator naming filter, and I want to filter all of the value which has length less than 4. So it dot length is greater than 4, then only emit those values. I'm using here print ln and print the values one by one. Execute it. You can see we are getting jetpack, Android, Kotlin, Himanshu, jetpack. So basically all of the items that we are seeing right now in our console has length greater than 4. And we have jetpack 2 times. So basically we have duplicate value, and I want to remove this duplicate value. So if you want to remove it, you can use distinct operator. Re-execute it, you won't see jetpack 2 times. Jetpack, Android, Kotlin, Himanshu. Now let's say I want to take only the first emission. So for that we have a function naming take, and in this take you can pass the numbers of emission that you want to take. So we are interested only in the first emission. Execute it and you will see only the first emission, which is jetpack. Similarly, if you want to take the last emission, you can use take last, or you can also pass here 3, 4, whatever emission you want from last. So let's say I'm using the last 3 emissions, and I'm getting last 3 emission, which is if you see the observable, Kotlin, Himanshu, jetpack. So we have Android, Kotlin, Himanshu because it removes this duplicate value jetpack. And once you remove the jetpack duplicate values, we have Android, Kotlin, Himanshu. That is what we are getting in here. Similarly, if we have take, we have skip. So if you want to skip emissions, you can do that thing very easily by using a skip function. Execute it and it will skip the first 3 emissions, and now we have only Himanshu. Similarly, if you want to skip the last emission, I'm using here 1. Execute it, it will skip the last emission. Cool. So now we're gonna see takeUntil, takeWhile, skipWhile, skipUntil. These are some advanced operators, filter operators basically. So to show you that, let me remove all of the operators that we have, and first we'll see takeWhile. So in this training lambda, you can pass your condition, and if your condition is true, then only it will emit those values. So if it dot length is less than 4, so for j and jet it is true. That means we are only getting these 2 values in my final result. Jet, because length of j is 1, which is true. Length of jet is 3, which is also true. And after that we have 7, and 7 is greater than 4, which is wrong. And Android, Kotlin, Himanshu, jetpack is also not satisfying this condition. So that's why I'm getting here j and jet. Now what will happen if I revert this condition and execute it? Well, we can't see any emissions because j has length 1 and 1 is not greater than 4. So if your first condition is false, it doesn't matter what are your next emission will have. It still won't emit those values. If first condition is false, it won't emit the other values. This is the use case of takeWhile. So we are done with takeWhile. takeWhile is used when you want to emit values based on a certain condition. Now we're gonna see takeUntil. So takeUntil, it's the reverse of takeWhile. If this condition is true, it stops the emissions. So if length is greater than 4, if this condition is true, it will simply stop the emission. Execute it, you will see j, jet and jetpack. Why jetpack? Because jetpack has length 7 and 7 is greater than true. If our condition is true, it simply stops. But In our third emission, we have jetpack that has length 7, and this condition will act as a threshold. This will give you true, and after that it won't emit any value. So it will emit the last value on which this predicate will return you true. In our case, jetpack is 7 and 7 is greater than 4, which is true. Because jetpack is providing the true value, and due to that reason it will emit this value, and after that it won't emit any value. This is also a property of takeUntil. It will emit the value which will give us true in their predicate. So we have done with takeUntil and takeWhile, and now we are going to discuss skipWhile and skipUntil. So let's begin with our skipWhile. So if this condition is true that you are going to mention in your training lambda, then it will skip those emission, otherwise it won't. So if my it dot length is less than 4, I'm gonna skip those emissions. So in this subscribe, I'm using here println and print the values. So logically it skips j and jet. Execute it, and we are getting jetpack, android, kotlin, himanshu, but we won't receive j and jet because of this condition. This condition is true for these two. Now what will happen if I just revert the condition and execute it? And this time we are getting all the emissions that we are having in our observable. This is because our first condition, basically the first emission value, will have value j and its length is 1, and 1 is not greater than 4. That means our predicate is false, and once it false, it won't care about the other emission. It simply start emitting all of the values that we are receiving from this observable, and due to that reason, because our first condition for j is false, it won't care about the other emission. It will simply emit directly without checking any kind of condition in our skipWhile. That's why we are receiving j, jet, jetpack, android, kotlin, himanshu and jetpack. So we are done with our skipWhile. Now it's time to see skipUntil. So in skipUntil we have to pass our observable, and once the observable which you have mentioned in your skipUntil start emitting values, then only we will getting all of the emitted value in our subscriber or the consumer. So for that I'm going to create a variable naming timer observable. This is nothing but an observable. We have timer delay of 1 second, so time unit is seconds. You can mention your timer observable in here. So once your timer observable start emitting values, then only will receive those events in our subscription. At the end I'm using here thread.sleep, and I want to sleep my thread for 4 seconds in order to complete this execution. Execute it for after 4 seconds our process get completed, and we are not seeing anything in here. This is because it will take 1 second to complete, and before that all of the emissions have been emitted from this observable. So what I'm going to do in here, I'm going to attach delay to my observable, and this time I'm using 2 seconds delay, and time unit is nothing but seconds, and this time you will receive everything. So 213. So total time taken by this observable is 3, and we are sleeping our thread for 4 seconds. That means our program will be executed properly. And now when you execute it, you can see we are getting all the things, because after 1 second this observable start emitting values, and once it start emitting values, we are getting all of the emissions from this observable in this subscription. So this is the use case of skipUntil. When you are having any other observable and you want to start your subscription when your second observable start observing data. Now we're going to talk about debounce. Debounce is actually used to provide throttle, and usually debounce is used in search bar. So user when types something, instead of calling our API directly, will wait for some time, and if user wait let's say for 1 second, then only will hit our backend API. So in this case we'll use debounce. So for that I'm gonna create an observable, create, type of this thing is string, and we have emitter. So first I'm gonna use emitter and emit values, let's say j, then I'm gonna sleep my thread for 100 milliseconds. Then we have emitter dot on next, basically we emit jetpack, and we'll use thread.sleep for let's say 300 millisecond. We'll use emitter and again emit value. So emit values will eventually use to mimic the user input. So first user type J and then it wait for 100 millisecond, and after that it type jetpack, wait for 300 millisecond, and after that it types Android course and it wait for let's say 1 second. Now just below to it I'm using observable and we have debounce, and I want to produce throttle of 500 millisecond. Time unit is in millisecond. At the end I'm gonna use subscribe and print the value. So logically we'll receive Android course, because after typing Android course user will wait 1000 millisecond, and 1000 millisecond is greater than 500 millisecond. So logically we'll receive Android course. Execute it. You'll see we are getting Android course. So this is a use case of debounce, and mostly we'll use debounce with search bar just to prevent unnecessary backend API calls. So that's it for our filter operators. Thank you for watching this video.